The doors of the tribunal chamber slid open with a hiss that echoed through the massive hall. Captain Sarah walked forward, her boots clicking against the polished crystal floor. Behind her, 5 members of her unit marched in formation, their dress uniforms pressed and perfect despite 3 weeks in holding cells. The chamber stretched upward for what seemed like miles, its walls made of some transparent material that showed the stars beyond. Thousands of aliens filled the viewing galleries, their various forms creating a sea of colors and shapes that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Sarah kept her eyes forward. She had been trained for combat, not courtrooms. She had led soldiers through hell and brought most of them home. Now she stood accused of being a monster. The prosecution table sat to the left. An ambassador of the species stood beside it. They looked almost human, except their skin glowed with a soft golden light and they had no mouth, communicating through telepathic broadcasts that the translation devices converted to sound. His voice filled the chamber, musical and sad at the same time. Distinguished members of the tribunal, we gather today to address crimes that shock the conscience of civilized space. Sarah glanced at the judge's bench. 7 aliens sat in a semicircle on an elevated platform. She recognized a few species from the briefings. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and large black eyes. They looked like walking crystals that shifted colors with their moods. The others were equally strange, equally alien, and all of them watched the human prisoners with what looked like disgust. Commander James sat at the defense table, calm and professional. He was a lawyer before he joined the military, and Sarah trusted him completely. He had told her to stay quiet unless asked a direct question. "Let the evidence speak," he had said. Continued. Humanity is new to our galactic community. They arrived with impressive technology and bold promises of friendship. But when conflict came, they revealed their true nature: violent, brutal, uncontrolled. The holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered to life. It showed a battlefield. Sarah recognized it immediately. 7, the third moon of Prime. The footage came from a security drone. The image showed human marines advancing on a fortified position. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles, covering each other with practiced precision. Explosions blossomed across the battlefield. Soldiers fell. The human advance never stopped. 17 military installations destroyed, said. 4,300 soldiers dead. Entire defensive lines obliterated in campaigns lasting mere days. The footage shifted. It showed a human reducing a building to rubble. The destruction was total and terrifying. The hegemony came to this tribunal seeking justice. Their soldiers were slaughtered. Their defenses meant nothing against human aggression, and humanity claims this was warfare conducted with restraint. Its glow intensified, a sign of strong emotion among the. We pacifists find all violence abhorrent, but even we understand the concept of proportional response. What we see here is not defense, it is massacre. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. She wanted to speak, to explain, but had been clear. Not yet. The senior judge, a named L, leaned forward. His voice was dry and ancient. "The evidence seems quite clear, Ambassador. Perhaps this tribunal is merely a formality." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the viewing galleries. Sarah heard the translation devices struggling to keep up with dozens of languages, all expressing the same sentiment. Guilty. Monsters. Violent primitives who should never have been given access to the stars. Bowed slightly. The prosecution rests, confident that justice will be served. The ambassador sat down, and silence fell over the chamber. All eyes turned to the defense table. Stood slowly. He was a big man, tall and broad-shouldered, but he moved with careful grace. He looked at each judge in turn before speaking. "Distinguished tribunal, my name is Commander James, and I serve as defense counsel for these accused soldiers. The prosecution has shown you violence. That much is true. War is violent. But violence alone does not constitute a war crime. He gestured to the holographic display. The prosecution showed you edited footage, carefully selected moments designed to shock and horrify. They showed you the end of battles without showing you how those battles began or how they were conducted. L tilted his head. You claim the evidence was manipulated. I claim it was incomplete, Your Honor. I request that this tribunal view the full combat records, not edited highlights but complete mission footage from beginning to end. Another judge, whose crystalline body glowed deep red, made a sound like breaking glass. The translator converted it to words. We have seen enough violence, human. What more could full footage possibly show? Smiled slightly. Context, Your Honor, intent, restraint, the very things that separate soldiers from murderers. Rose, the tribunal has limited time. Viewing hundreds of hours of combat footage serves no purpose. Then let us view selected engagements, said, but complete engagements from start to finish. Let the tribunal see what orders were given, what protocols were followed, what choices were made under fire. The judges conferred quietly among themselves. Sarah watched them, trying to read alien body language and failing. Finally, Elle spoke. Very well. The tribunal will view 3 complete engagements selected by the defense. But choose wisely, Commander. Our patience is not infinite. Nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. The defense calls up the first mission file now. The holographic display shifted. New footage began to play. Sarah saw herself on screen, younger by 2 years, standing in a briefing room with her unit. The timestamp showed it was 6 hours before the attack on Firebase Delta 7. Her recorded voice filled the chamber. Listen up. Intelligence confirms civilian refugees sheltering in the Western District, grid squares 47 through 49. Those areas are absolutely off limits. I don't care if enemy fire is coming from there. We do not return fire into civilian zones. Mark it on your maps now. The footage showed her soldiers doing exactly that, highlighting sections of their tactical displays in red. Rules of engagement are as follows, recorded Sarah continued. We broadcast surrender terms in on all frequencies every 5 minutes. We do not fire on anyone attempting to surrender. We do not fire on medical personnel or vehicles marked with appropriate symbols. We do not fire on obvious civilian structures unless confirmed as military targets by command. One of her sergeants spoke up. Ma'am, what if they're using civilian buildings as firing positions? Then we call in a strike assessment team. We confirm the target. We wait for civilians to clear if possible. We document everything. This is not complicated, people. We follow the laws of armed conflict, the same laws humanity has followed for centuries. The footage jumped forward to the battle itself. This time, the perspective came from helmet cameras worn by her soldiers. The tribunal watched as the unit advanced carefully, checking corners, clearing rooms, moving with disciplined precision. A soldier appeared in a doorway. 3 human rifles swung toward him. The translation software picked up human voices shouting in, "Surrender! Drop your weapon!" The fired instead. The return fire was immediate and lethal. But moments later, another appeared with his hands raised. The humans held fire. They secured him, checked him for weapons, and moved him to a collection point for prisoners. The footage continued. The tribunal watched as human medics treated wounded. They saw Sarah's unit bypass a tempting target because thermal imaging showed civilian heat signatures. They saw soldiers taking the long route, the dangerous route, because the short route went through a residential area. When Firebase Delta 7 finally fell, the humans had taken 127 prisoners. Every single one was given medical attention, food, and water. Pause the footage. This is warfare conducted under rules, Your Honor. This is violence constrained by ethics and law. The chamber was quieter now. Some of the hostility had faded from the viewing galleries, replaced by confusion. This was not what they had expected to see. These soldiers were well trained. That much is obvious, but following procedures does not excuse the scale of destruction. Then let us examine the scale, said. He brought up new displays showing casualty statistics. 17 installations destroyed, yes, but these were legitimate military targets, confirmed by multiple intelligence sources. No hospitals, no schools, no civilian infrastructure. He highlighted another figure. 4,300 soldiers killed in action. Tragic, absolutely, but over 10,000 soldiers captured alive. Civilian casualties in the combat zones were under 2%, lower than any multi-species conflict in the last 2,000 years of galactic record. Numbers appeared on the display, comparing human operations to historical conflicts. The difference was stark. El leaned forward, his ancient eyes fixed on the data. How is this possible? Your weapons are clearly devastating. Because our soldiers are trained to make difficult choices, said. Because we have military lawyers monitoring every operation. Because we have rules we actually follow, and we punish those who break them. He gestured to Sarah and her unit. These soldiers could have leveled entire cities. Their weapons were capable of it, but they didn't. Not because they lacked the power, but because they possessed the discipline. The second judge, a female, spoke for the first time. You are saying humans deliberately constrain their own violence. Yes, Your Honor. Why? Met her gaze. Because that is what civilization means. The tribunal session ended for the day, but Sarah could feel something changing in the chamber. The certainty of her guilt was no longer quite so certain. The aliens were confused now, trying to reconcile the monsters they expected with the soldiers they were seeing. As guards escorted her back to her cell, Sarah allowed herself a small moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the truth would be enough. The second day of the tribunal began with tension crackling through the chamber. Overnight, word had spread through the station about the human defense. The viewing galleries were packed with even more aliens, all wanting to see these strange creatures who claimed to follow rules even in the chaos of war. Stood at the defense table ready. He had barely slept. Sarah could see it in his eyes, but his voice remained steady and confident. The defense calls Sergeant Maria to testify. Stood from the prisoner section and walked to the witness platform. She was shorter than Sarah, stocky and powerful, with scars on her face from close-quarters combat. She looked uncomfortable in the formal setting but stood at attention. Approached her. Sergeant, please describe the engagement at Grid Zone, November 7 on the 8th day of operations. Nodded. Yes, sir. My squad was tasked with eliminating an artillery position that was shelling our supply lines. We approached from the east at dawn. The holographic display showed helmet camera footage from perspective. The tribunal watched as her squad moved through rocky terrain toward a bunker complex. When we got to Overwatch position, continued, I scanned the target with thermal imaging, standard procedure. The footage showed what she saw. The artillery position was clearly visible, but so were dozens of heat signatures in an adjacent building. I saw 30-plus heat signatures in the building next to the target. Could have been civilians, could have been off-duty soldiers. I couldn't confirm. What did you do? Asked. I called it in, requested the be delayed. Command approved. We moved to a flanking position instead. The footage jumped forward, showing squad taking a longer, more dangerous route. They climbed exposed cliff faces, crossed open ground under potential enemy observation, all to avoid the building with the uncertain heat signatures. 3 of my people got hit during the approach, said quietly. Corporal took shrapnel in the leg. Private caught a round in the shoulder. Private broke his ankle on the climb. But you completed the mission? Asked. Yes, sir. We took out the artillery position from the flank, captured 8 soldiers, and the building I flagged turned out to be full of civilians after all, families of the artillery crew. Rose, you endangered your own soldiers to protect potential enemies. Looked at the ambassador directly. I endangered my soldiers to protect potential civilians. That's the job. The crystalline judge made a sound like wind through glass. This is illogical. From a tactical standpoint, you weakened your position to protect those who might have been hostile. From a tactical standpoint, Your Honor, I followed the rules of engagement, said. And from a human standpoint, I can live with my choices. Can't say the same if I'd killed 30 civilians because I was too lazy to take the hard route. Nodded, thank you, Sergeant, no further questions. Approached for cross-examination. Sergeant, you seem proud of your restraint, but 3 of your soldiers were wounded because of your decision. How do you justify that to them? Smiled grimly. I don't have to, Ambassador, they were there. Was the one who spotted the heat signatures first. Volunteered to lead the climb. They knew what we were doing and why. So all human soldiers share this obsession with protecting the enemy. We don't protect enemies, said. We protect civilians, there's a difference. The soldiers we fought, we killed them when necessary and captured them when possible. The civilians, we kept them alive, that's not obsession, that's law. Returned to his seat and was dismissed. Immediately called the next witness. The defense calls Lieutenant. Walked to the witness stand. He moved stiffly, and Sarah knew why. The burns from 7 still bothered him sometimes, especially when station climate control ran cold. Lieutenant said, please describe the artillery barrage on your position during the battle for 7. Nodded. My platoon was securing a landing zone when artillery opened up. Heavy stuff, 155mm rounds, the kind that don't leave much behind. The footage showed chaos. Explosions tore through the landscape. Human soldiers dove for cover, shouted warnings, returned fire at distant targets. I was near a medical collection point, said. We had 5 wounded humans there, and 3 wounded POWs we'd captured earlier in the day. The footage showed near a shallow crater being used as an aid station. Human medics worked frantically on bleeding soldiers. The prisoners lay nearby, already bandaged and stabilized. When the barrage started, everyone scattered for cover, but one of them had a broken leg, couldn't move fast. I saw a round coming in right for his position. The footage slowed. The tribunal watched as a shell arced through the air, its trajectory carrying it directly toward the wounded. Without hesitation, threw himself over the alien soldier's body. The explosion caught them both. Fire and shrapnel washed over his back. His armor took some of the damage, but the heat got through. The footage showed him screaming, but he didn't move until the barrage ended. Why? Elle asked, his ancient voice heavy with genuine confusion. Why would you risk your life for an enemy prisoner? Looked at the judge. Because the Geneva Conventions require the humane treatment of prisoners of war, Your Honor, and because that soldier had surrendered, he was under our protection. That means something to us. But the pain, another judge said, the injuries, surely preservation of yourself takes precedence. Not over my honor, Your Honor, said simply, not over what's right. The chamber fell silent. Sarah watched the judges trying to process this. They came from civilizations that had automated warfare, that fought with drones and AI-controlled weapons. The concept of a soldier willingly suffering for an enemy was completely alien to them. Let the silence stretch before continuing. The defense would like to enter into evidence the medical records of prisoners taken by human forces during the conflict. Documents appeared on the holographic display. Thousands of pages of medical files, treatment records, supply manifests. Every prisoner received medical care equal to or better than human soldiers, said. In 16 documented cases, human medical supplies were shared with POWs even though human stocks were running low. He pulled up specific examples. A human medic performing emergency surgery on a severed limb using equipment meant for humans. A human blood donation that saved a life when no compatible alien blood was available. Supplies diverted from human units to prevent prisoners from suffering. Stood again. This is all very moving, Commander, but it does not change the fundamental facts. Humans wage war with terrible efficiency. The destruction they cause is immense. Because war itself is destructive, said. But there is a difference between necessary destruction and excessive destruction, between legitimate military targets and war crimes. He brought up new footage. This time it showed an installation from overhead. This was a command and control center, legitimate military target. Humans destroyed it. The view shifted to another building. This was a civilian hospital 3 kilometers away. Humans protected it, even posted guards to prevent looting. More images flashed across the display. Destroyed military factories, untouched civilian factories, leveled barracks, intact apartment buildings. Every single target hit by human forces was documented, justified. The prosecution claims humans showed no restraint, said. The evidence shows the opposite. Humans showed more restraint than any military force in recent galactic history. He pulled up comparative data again. The border war of 40 years ago. Civilian casualty rate, 42%. The peacekeeping operation on Theta 20 years ago. Civilian casualty rate, 31%. Those operations used automated systems, supposedly more precise and less emotional than organic soldiers. The numbers hung in the air, damning. Human operations in the conflict. Civilian casualty rate, 1.8%. The judges leaned forward, studying the data, pressed his advantage. You want to know what makes humans different? This is it. We don't just have soldiers. We have soldiers with consciences. Soldiers who can make decisions that algorithms can't. Soldiers who understand that some things matter more than tactical efficiency. He gestured to Sarah and her unit. These people could have won faster if they ignored the rules. They could have suffered fewer casualties if they treated everyone as enemies. They could have made their jobs easier by bombing first and asking questions later. But they didn't. His voice rose. They followed the laws of armed conflict. They followed the Geneva Conventions. They followed humanity's military code of justice. And they did it while being shot at, while watching their friends die, while under more stress than most beings in this chamber can imagine. He turned to face the judges directly. The prosecution wants you to condemn humans for being violent, but violence in war is inevitable. The question isn't whether humans can destroy. The question is whether humans can choose not to destroy, and the evidence proves they can. The defense called more witnesses. A human military lawyer who had been embedded with combat units, monitoring operations in real time and vetoing targets that didn't meet legal standards. An intelligence analyst who showed the verification process for every target struck. A logistics officer who detailed the resources devoted to prisoner care and civilian protection. Each witness added another layer to the picture. Humans didn't just pay lip service to ethical warfare. They built entire systems around it. They trained for it. They enforced it. They made it the foundation of their military doctrine. By the end of the second day, the mood in the chamber had shifted completely. The aliens in the viewing galleries no longer looked at the human soldiers with disgust. Now they looked confused, intrigued, even impressed. As Sarah was led back to her cell that night, she heard 2 aliens talking in the corridor. The translation device picked up their conversation. Can it be true? Can any species really fight that way? The evidence seems clear, though I confess I do not understand the why of it. Perhaps that is what makes them dangerous. Not that they can kill, but that they choose when not to kill. Sarah smiled in the darkness of her cell. Understanding was beginning to dawn. Tomorrow would bring the final day of testimony, and she had a feeling the verdict might not be what anyone expected. The third and final day of the tribunal began with an unexpected move. The prosecutor stood before the judges with his glow dimmed. The prosecution calls Colonel of the Hegemony military to testify. An officer entered the chamber. He was large even for his species, with heavy gray skin covered in armored plates and 4 arms ending in claws. His species had evolved as predators, and it showed. He moved to the witness platform with military precision. "Colonel," said, "you commanded the defense of Sector 9 during the human invasion. Please describe what happened when your forces attempted to surrender." The colonel's translator rendered his growling speech into standard Galactic. "We were losing. The humans attacked with coordination we had never seen. My soldiers were dying in numbers we could not sustain. I gave the order to surrender." "And did the humans accept your surrender?" "No, they slaughtered my soldiers. Hundreds died trying to surrender. It was a massacre." The viewing galleries erupted in noise. Sarah felt her stomach drop. This was a lie. It had to be. Stood slowly. "The defense requests the right to cross-examine this witness." El nodded. "Proceed." Approached the colonel. "You say you ordered your forces to surrender. Can you tell the tribunal what the standard surrender protocol is?" The colonel's eyes narrowed. "Protocol?" "Yes, the procedures for surrender. How forces indicate they wish to cease combat." We stopped shooting." "Did you broadcast surrender on military frequencies?" "No." "Did you raise white flags or display the universal symbols for surrender?" "No." "Did you respond to the surrender terms that human forces broadcast every 5 minutes in your own language?" The colonel hesitated. "I do not recall such broadcasts." Turned to the judges. The defense would like to enter into evidence the communications logs from Sector 9. Data filled the holographic display. Timestamped transmissions, audio recordings, everything. The tribunal could see and hear human forces broadcasting surrender terms in every 5 minutes, exactly as claimed. They could see the transmissions going out, being received by equipment and being ignored. "Now, Colonel," said, his voice cold, "let me show you something else." New footage appeared. It showed military communications, intercepted and decrypted by human intelligence. The tribunal heard orders from high command. "All units are to fight to the last soldier. Surrender is forbidden. Those who attempt surrender will be executed as traitors." The colonel's translator device caught his sharp intake of breath. "You didn't order a surrender, did you, Colonel?" said. "You were ordered to fight to the death for propaganda purposes. Your high command wanted martyrs, not survivors." "That is, you cannot." "And when human forces overran your position, how many of your soldiers actually survived, Colonel?" The colonel said nothing. "Let me tell you," said. 847 soldiers from Sector 9 survived. They are alive today because human medics pulled them from the rubble, patched their wounds, and stabilized them for transport to proper medical facilities. He pulled up medical records, including your nephew, Colonel, Private N of the 3rd Infantry. He lost both legs to an artillery strike. A human corpsman named Specialist Rachel performed emergency surgery in a bombed-out bunker while under sniper fire. She kept him alive long enough for evacuation. The colonel's claws scraped against the witness platform. He had no response. Turned to the judges. The defense would also like to enter evidence regarding military doctrine. Documents appeared, recovered from captured military databases. The tribunal saw war plans, targeting protocols, acceptable casualty assessments. "The hegemony has no equivalent to human ethical codes," said. "Their automated defense systems were programmed without distinction between military and civilian targets. Their war planners expected and accepted massive civilian casualties on both sides." He highlighted specific passages. Here, the Military Council discusses acceptable civilian losses in human population centers. 50% was considered optimal for breaking human morale. They plan to kill billions. The chamber erupted again. Now the shocked whispers were directed at the colonel, not the human soldiers. And here, continued, we see the assessment of their initial attack. They initiated this conflict believing their superior numbers and willingness to accept casualties would overwhelm humanity. They anticipated victory within 30 days through what they called strategic terror strikes on civilian infrastructure. The evidence was damning. They had started the war, planned for massive civilian casualties, and then cried foul when human forces fought back with precision and restraint. Its glow had dimmed to almost nothing. The prosecution was not aware of this evidence. Because the hegemony didn't want you to know, said. They came to this tribunal claiming to be victims, but they were the aggressors and they fought without honor or mercy. He gestured to Sarah and her soldiers. These humans stopped them. These humans fought with one hand tied behind their backs by their own ethical codes, and they still won. Not because they were more brutal, but because they were more disciplined. The judges conferred among themselves for long minutes. Finally, Elle spoke. This tribunal will recess for deliberation. We will reconvene in 3 days with a verdict. The wait was agonizing. Sarah and her unit remained in their cells, but the guards treated them differently now. More respect, less hostility. News had spread throughout the station about the evidence presented. On the 3rd day, the tribunal reconvened. The chamber was packed beyond capacity, with aliens pressed against every available space. Word had spread across known space. This verdict would matter. The judges entered, and silence fell like a hammer. El stood, his ancient form somehow seeming even older and more weary. His voice carried through the chamber without need for amplification. This tribunal has reviewed all evidence presented. We have deliberated extensively on the charges brought against humanity and the specific soldiers accused of war crimes. Sarah held her breath. The charges are dismissed. The chamber exploded with noise. Sarah felt her knees weaken, but she forced herself to remain standing at attention. Beside her, grabbed her hand and squeezed. Elle waited for silence before continuing. Moreover, this tribunal issues a formal commendation to the human military forces involved in the conflict. In 2,000 years of recorded military history in this galactic community, we have never seen warfare conducted with such restraint and ethical consideration. The senior judge looked directly at Sarah and her unit. You could have destroyed entire worlds with your weapons. You possess the power to level cities, to annihilate populations, to wage total war without mercy. But you did not. Not because you lacked capability, but because you possess something far more important: discipline, ethics, humanity. He turned to address the full chamber. This tribunal has learned something profound. Any species can build weapons of terrible power. Any civilization can create the means of destruction. But it takes a truly mature species to build warriors who understand when not to use that power. Elle's gaze swept across the alien observers. For we have believed that removing the organic element from warfare made conflict more ethical. We thought algorithms could be more precise, more measured, more just than living soldiers. We were wrong. He gestured to the evidence still displayed holographically in the chamber. No algorithm agonizes over civilian lives. No automated system hesitates before firing because it questions whether the target is truly legitimate. No drone performs emergency surgery on an enemy prisoner while under fire. Another judge, spoke up, her crystalline voice clear. Humans have shown us that controlled violence guided by ethical principles is more trustworthy than unlimited violence constrained only by programming. They have demonstrated that warriors with consciences are superior to weapons without them. Elle nodded. Therefore, this tribunal makes the following recommendations to the Galactic Assembly. First, human military ethical training should become the foundation for all galactic peacekeeping forces. Second, The human concepts of the laws of armed conflict and the Geneva Conventions should be adopted as galactic standard. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Third, humanity should be invited to participate in the training and oversight of all military operations conducted under galactic authority. The implications rippled through the chamber. Humanity, the species to join galactic civilization, was being elevated to a position of moral authority on military matters. As for the hegemony, El continued, his voice hardening, evidence presented in this tribunal reveals war crimes committed by forces, including deliberate targeting of civilian populations and violations of surrender protocols. A separate tribunal will be convened to address these crimes. The colonel had already fled the chamber, but it wouldn't save him. Justice was coming. El looked back at Sarah. Captain, you and your soldiers are free to go with the thanks and respect of this tribunal. You have served with honor. You have proven that humanity deserves not just a place among the stars, but a respected place. Sarah saluted. Her unit saluted. The judges returned the gesture, a sign of respect between warriors. As they left the chamber, aliens pressed forward, trying to speak with them, to shake their hands, to understand these strange beings who carried such power with such responsibility. Sarah pushed through the crowd, her mind reeling. Commander found them in the corridor. He was grinning. Well done, all of you. We just did our jobs, Sarah said. That's exactly right, replied. You did your jobs the way humans have done them for centuries, with courage, with honor, and with humanity. That's what saved us, not our weapons or our tactics, but our ethics. They made their way to the docking bay where a human ship waited to take them home. As they walked, Sarah thought about what had happened. Humanity had been put on trial for being too violent, and the galaxy had learned that humans weren't violent enough to be monsters. They were just violent enough to be soldiers, warriors with codes, fighters with consciences. The ship lifted off from Axiom Prime, carrying them back toward Earth. Sarah looked out the viewport at the receding station, at the thousands of ships from hundreds of species, all gathering to see the humans depart. What happens now? Asked. Sarah smiled. Now we go home, and then we come back to teach. Teach what? That being dangerous isn't the same as being a danger. That power without ethics is just destruction, but power with ethics is protection. That the hardest thing a warrior can do isn't kill the enemy. It's knowing when not to kill the enemy. The other soldiers nodded. They understood. They had lived it. Back on Axiom Prime, El watched the human ship depart from his chambers. Beside him stood another, younger and more optimistic. Do you think they can truly change us? The younger asked. El was silent for a moment. No, I think we must change ourselves, but humans have shown us it is possible. They arrived with terrible weapons and terrifying efficiency, and we feared them. Now we understand that we should have been hopping for them. How so? Because they are what we forgot how to be, El said. Warriors who remember they are people first. Soldiers who carry their ethics into the fire. We automated warfare and thought we made it clean. We only made it easier to forget what we were doing. He turned from the viewport. Humans cannot forget. Every soldier they send into battle carries the weight of their choices. Every life they take, every life they spare, is a conscious decision made by a thinking, feeling being. That weight is what keeps them human. And being human, as it turns out, is something worth protecting. The younger considered this. Will the other species accept human leadership in military matters? They will, El said with certainty. Because the alternative is to continue as we have been. And after seeing what humans can do when they are constrained by ethics, I think every species in the galaxy wants to ensure we never face them when they are not. On Earth, news of the verdict spread like wildfire. Humanity had been acquitted. More than that, humanity had been vindicated. The species that had joined galactic civilization as uncertain newcomers had proven their worth in the most unexpected way. Not through science or art or diplomacy, though humans excelled at those too, but through the simple, profound demonstration that humans could be trusted with power, because humans understood that power came with responsibility. Sarah returned to a hero's welcome. Parades, medals, speeches from leaders. But what she remembered most was a conversation with a young recruit at the military academy where she was asked to speak. "Ma'am, how did you know what to do? How did you make those decisions under fire?" Sarah thought about it, about all the moments in combat when choices mattered. "I didn't always know," she said honestly. "I made mistakes. I had doubts, but I had training and I had rules and I had a conscience. And when I wasn't sure, I asked myself one question: can I live with this choice? Can I look at myself tomorrow and the day after and every day for the rest of my life and be